Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
My life is good now, like as surface level, like everyone's happy, taken care for. I can afford things, like I have a good house to live in. I'm not homeless or anything like that. So it's like people can have the same life, you know what I mean? And like I know that my life can get better too. Like my life still has a ton of problems, but it's only getting better, And I feel like I can let people know, like, be like, hey, yeah, it's going to be hard, but if this is the path you want to go down, like I want to support you through it and let you know that you're not alone, and that you can do it and that your quality of life is going to be just as good as everyone else's.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA. My guest today is just a ball of fire. And what I mean is that she's just go, go, go. She's super passionate, super motivated. She turned her life around after some really rough teenage years, hard, fast teenage years. Now she's in school. She's got a bunch of jobs. She's 19 years old, and she also is raising a 4-year-old kid. Wow. Hi, I'm here with Tamar Sebesta. Tamar, one more time. What is that name? You sound like a goddess. What is that from? What's going on with that?
So my parents are a lot of different nationalities. My mom is Persian, Native American, German, and my dad is Austrian, German, and Jewish, Italian. So I come from everywhere.
You got it all going on. And I love your mauve hair. Is that mauve, would you say?
It's kind of like a silver gray. I change it a lot. I love getting my hair done. I think it reflects my personality.
It's beautiful, really beautiful. I wish the listeners could see it, but I'll have a picture of you up with the episode so you can have any hair color you want when that goes up. So
exciting.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself, about you as a little girl, let's say.
I gotta say, as I started to grow up, I realized that I blocked out a lot of my childhood. I don't think about it ever, which I feel like is very unhealthy. My mom, she was a drug addict. She's also bipolar and schizophrenic, drug-induced. And she was basically a huge manipulator, a very big liar, and kind of scarred me so much. I literally cannot remember a lot of my childhood. She caused a lot of problems for our family, which led me to be taken from her when I was in 4th grade. And I remember, like, as I grew up, I started to just disconnect myself from that past until I realized how much it had affected me. I got pregnant at 15. I have a 4-year-old. I was very sexually active very young. I did a lot of drugs very young. I hung out with like 25-year-olds when I was like 13, and I never knew what the problem was because my dad, he's a hardworking guy and he loves me, but he's just has his own trauma. So he just really tried to ignore it. And he basically would say how like she never did anything wrong, just pure denial. So I grew up thinking, oh, this is normal, not realizing that the things I was doing was because of my trauma, and I never dealt with it.
So you were living with your mom and your dad, or was your dad out of the picture, or what?
Super complicated. So my mom, because she's mentally ill too, she was never on medication. So it was always fluctuating at the household. She would basically run him out of the house all the time. He'd be grabbing his shoes, having to sleep in his van at the beach. He would pay for everything, but she just wouldn't let him in the house because I don't know, like there was nothing going on. But I remember just them scream. It was constant screaming and arguing. She was very physical with him in front of me. She used to do things like harm herself in front of me, like grab hammers and throw them around the house and then call CPS and like call like the cops and trying to say that like it was him. Like I remember this, and it was crazy because before I got taken, I was in and out of court like my whole childhood.
Why were you in and out of court?
I don't even know. Like my mom had been married before to my dad's friend, and I think that it was her own weird like guilt, or like regret of marrying him, but she would put me in the middle of it, and she would just have me lie about things that he said or do. And I remember like being so little and just being terrified and like having her like scream at me, telling me to write all this stuff for like, a court document paper. And I remember like when I went and read it in court when I was like 8 years old, my dad never like let it go to this day. Like he would say like, I can't believe you lied to me about, like you lied to the court, like you didn't stand up for me. And I'm like, for me, I'm like, I was a child, I was literally brainwashed, and I felt like so unheard by like everyone. And it was definitely like, it was really traumatic. And I remember I went to a private school, and everyone basically would like outcast me because I was the kid that had like the messed up family at home. And when I got taken, one of the families that was at the school with me, I lived with them. And I remember it was just so hard because it was like my personal life was like at the one place that I could escape to. And I like was never escaping it. It was constantly there and everyone knew about it. And it was definitely like, it was rough.
Right. So the family, when you were removed from the home, were you removed by CPS, and then they put you with the neighboring family, or how did that work?
So the cops knew our house, like they knew us by name because they were there so often. And that night, my mom had taken drugs in front of me. And I remember she was driving the car, and I told her that I would never love her again. I was like little if she did that. And I didn't even know what it was. Like, I just knew it was wrong. And she did it. And I remember after that, like something kind of like changed in me. Like I got so angry and so bitter after that. And the whole night she was driving us around like Costa Mesa, and just kind of like saying how people were after her, how people were chasing her because she was on a schizo trip. And like little me, I didn't know what that was. So I was sitting there like terrified, like crying, screaming. And she actually turned herself into the hospital because she genuinely believed people were after her. So then CPS was called, and they were like, okay, clearly, she's on drugs. So I went to Orangewood, and I honestly don't remember much there. I just remember refusing to eat. I remember how they like checked my body. Like you have to undress and they have to like check for signs of abuse. I remember thinking like, I just felt so dirty for some reason.
Right. So what is Orangewood? What is that?
Orangewood, it's the transitional housing. So it's in Orange in California, and I stayed there because I was placed. So I never went to a group home, but it's basically where I was. It was the transitional period. So if no one came for me, if no one could get me, then I would go to a group home.
So they basically inspected you, and that made you feel ashamed.
It did. And I remember thinking, I didn't know what was going on, but I remember they took like all my belongings and like all my clothes. And I felt like a number. You know what I mean? Like when they talk about people in prison, how they're just a number. I like felt like that as a child.
Right. So you were 10 years old now at this point?
Yeah.
And did you make any friends there? Were you
No.
Were there other kids? Were there adults, families? What?
I think I was on suicidal watch because I remember there was no one there, and I was in a separate area from everyone. They didn't put me by anyone. And when the cops were driving me there, I remember I kept threatening to jump out, and I was like, they had to like lock me in there because they thought that I was actually going to do it. And honestly, I'm a very blunt person as an adult, and as a child, I was a very good kid, but I was very assertive of my feelings. I was never the one to stay quiet. So I remember I was just talking back, and I was just yelling at the cop. And I think that they had me on a watch, looking back now as an adult, because I wasn't around anyone. I was just there all alone. And like, I remember sleeping on like their couch, and it was terrible.
So how long were you there?
I don't remember. My dad basically refuses to believe that I was ever there.
He denies it.
He completely denies it. And my dad isn't an abusive person, but he is a aggressive and assertive person, and very in denial, very like traditional old school, like the man has to take care of everything. So for him, I think that he believes because he lost me and couldn't do enough, that it was like an ashamed as being a father, So to him, like he literally denies that anything happened. I remember when for college, he didn't even allow me access to my court paperwork that says like who I was appointed to and how long I was in foster care. He didn't even allow me to do that, like look at that to see like to get help in school when I had a kid or anything. So when I turned 18, I had to call the county. I had to go find it all myself. And I remember thinking like here it is, the evidence, but my whole life I was told that it never happened. And I remember thinking back on lots of things he did like that. When I was in high school, I did drugs one time, and I had a memory that I was sexually assaulted when I was a kid. And I remember I told my dad that, and he literally said, we're not talking about this. Like, that's not true. That I would have never let that happen. And it was never brought up again. And to this day, that was like 5 years ago. And he's never brought it up since then. And I remember looking back, I see all these patterns of like denial. And it's just like, to me, like, it's so hurtful, you know? And it's like, I don't even blame him because he couldn't come get me, but I blame him for ignoring the fact that I was going through trauma and that he didn't put me in therapy. He didn't do anything.
So after Orangewood, you went to that neighboring family, or did you end up, because you ended up with your dad eventually, right?
I did. So it was a family friend. I went and stayed with them. I love them to this day. It was definitely not healthy.
Why? Why not?
The mother her husband was cheating on her. And I remember, so she would drive me to school because we lived kind of far from where I was going to school, and they didn't want to move me again just because of everything I'd gone through. So they commuted to drive me there. And her daughter ended up switching schools because they had moved. So every morning I would drive with her, and then her daughter would drive with the dad. And the mom would cry to me every single morning for like a year about how her husband was cheating on her and how I couldn't tell my friend, her daughter. So I was basically going to this home every day for a year after everything I had gone through, listening to this grown woman cry to me and telling me to keep that secret. And I always did. And I remember, gosh, when I was a teenager, I reconnected with her, and she was like, hey, like, did you know that when you were living with me, my dad was like seeing someone else? And she never knew that I knew. And to this day, you know, she probably never will know that I knew. And I remember it was so hard to blame her mom for that because she had done so much and taken me in. But I was also like, I remember it hurt, like having to keep something like that. Also at the age of like 10, I remember my whole life, I was just seeing and hearing all these adult things. And like, people would always say how I was so mature and how I was so much older for my age. And I'm like, that's not healthy. Like, I shouldn't have been like that, you know? Like, it followed me everywhere. Like, bad things, like, really followed me through my life. Like, everything you can imagine. It's been crazy.
It sounds like you were forced to grow up so quickly. You never had a chance to be a happy little kid, a little innocent kid, just experiencing life and learning about life.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I just act like it didn't happen or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when I was in high school and as I grew up, like, I always hung out with people that I guess were like wealthier or like, you know, looked like they had it all together, you know, quote unquote. And I just was so in denial of it. Even though the signs were all there, like you know what I mean? Like, I was hanging out with all the wrong people. You know, like all this crazy stuff. And I look back and I'm like, I was just running from it. Like, I was in this weird, like, self-defense mode of like, if anyone brought it up, you know. And I remember I thought it was crazy because I had my child's father, I had been dating him. And I remember one day he asked me, he was like, I've never heard about your mom. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? Like, I thought, I haven't said anything about her, like, ever, like, just not even mention her. And again, later with my current relationship, he actually had asked me the same thing. Like, a year into the relationship, he was like, you've never mentioned anything about your mom. And I remember reflecting and thinking, well, this has happened before, you know, like I just act as if like it never happened or something. And I don't know.
Right. So, I mean, so like if you can put it away and not talk about it and not mention it, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to feel the pain about it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you are not in touch with your mom now for a long time.
No, I haven't seen her or spoken to her since I was in 7th grade. I saw her once, so she never fought for me. That was the other thing. She never went to one. They have classes, parental classes. So that my dad had to go through that for a year and a half before he could get me. He had to, you know, pass the sobriety checks, to go through all the steps. My mom never went to one. And she would call me like crazy, you know, like all this stuff, but she just never actually put in any effort. So
how did that make you feel?
it just made me so angry. I remember she showed up to my school one time a few years later, and after that we had to get a restraining order because she just showed up. And I remember just feeling all these crazy emotions. And my mom wasn't like, you know, like a lot of times, like sometimes your parents look like they have it together. My mom is like a full-blown homeless, like drug addict. Like she looks like that person like that you'll see on the side of the freeway. So for me, seeing this woman like that, I was so ashamed and like embarrassed. And she had tried to see me again a few years later, and I saw her one time just to see if she would have an apology or have any remorse. And the whole time she would say, I never did anything. Like the police lied to you, you know, like the government stole you from, like all this crazy stuff. And I remember after that, I said never again. And to this day, I've never seen her again. And yeah, my dad still chooses to see her. They're still legally married, which is crazy in and of itself. But I think that my dad's a Christian. I'm a Christian too, but I think my dad takes the Bible a little too literally, and he just won't leave her. He thinks that she'll change. And for me, part of me respects him because I'm like, that's the kind of guy that I would want to be with, you know, someone that doesn't just give up on you and doesn't. But on the other hand, I'm like, she put him through trauma too, you know, like she would abuse him. And I'm like, it's just, I don't know whatever my dad went through when he was younger, but clearly there's something underlying there too. But he still talks to her. And I remember before I turned 18, he would try to get me to go see her. And I remember I felt so disrespected that he would try to force me to go see someone that did that to me. And as an adult, he finally he doesn't ask me to anymore, but it still hurts me knowing that he's okay going and seeing her, knowing that everything she did.
Right. And do you feel that your dad did not protect you?
I do. I feel like less in my childhood because my mom was a crazy manipulator. Like no one knew what was going on at home for years. Like she had been doing drugs for probably since I was like 4 or 5. Like she got away with it. Like everyone thought she was normal. Like everyone thought she was a great mom. Like no one knew. And I remember staying up till like midnight or 1 a.m. watching TV every day. And like she wouldn't like feed me dinner, and she would just be in the backyard smoking on the phone with her friends. And I remember like she had a really big temper. And I think about just how that must have affected my dad too. And I'm like, I don't blame him when I was younger because some things he didn't know. But once she started to get more physical with him, I'm ashamed he didn't do anything. And I'm also a bit ashamed that he did nothing when I was a teenager because I went through a lot of hell through my adolescence, like bad stuff. And he works out of town, you know, and he just couldn't handle it. It would be like, you know, when they say like the last straw, like you just can't handle one more thing happening. And sometimes it hurts knowing that he didn't just notice the signs, or if he did see the signs, he just chose to do nothing for years. And I was just going through all this stuff. And I think it was a way for me asking for help, and he just didn't do anything.
And what's your relationship with him now?
It's really rough.
Yeah. What's your living situation?
I actually live with him. It's better now because he's gone all the time for work. So he's gone like Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, I usually take my son out, you know, or he'll be with his dad and I'll be gone, just kind of like avoiding, you know what I mean? He has a great relationship with my son, but not with me. It's definitely, we don't do family stuff. We don't really, like, we'll have sit down dinners when he's home to kind of catch up, but it's constant arguing. And I feel just angry at him for no reason. Like he'll, you know, not put a dish away and I'll just explode on him. And I think it's all this built up resentment that I have because like my boyfriend, he sees it and he'll be like, why are you like, you know, so angry? Like it's over nothing. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I just feel
right, but not
like,
really nothing because it's like years of stuff, right?
Exactly. So for me, I'm trying to leave the situation. I think that our relationship will be able to grow once I'm gone. But being so young and having a kid nowadays, it's, you know, in California, it's like impossible. I'm just trying to get myself on my feet so I can do that. But
right. So what happened when you were 15, you got pregnant and you decided to keep the baby?
I did. So I was sexually active very young.
Like how young?
Like junior high, I was doing stuff. And then I lost my virginity around 14 to someone that was 17. to multiple people. It wasn't like a one-time thing. Like I don't know what I was doing, but I just remember I needed to feel, and I think that could have been due to some childhood trauma. I know I mentioned that prior. I think that's why. I'm a psychology major too. So I think that that's definitely why I was doing that stuff. And I remember just talking to all these guys that were just bad guys. And my child's father, he actually wasn't a bad guy. He was a really good guy. He was like my age. We were just young and stupid. But I remember when I got pregnant, for me, it was never like, do I keep it or not? I just knew, like, I just kind of was like, okay, well, this is happening, you know, like, I was like, I guess I'm having a kid. Like, I didn't feel a lot about it, honestly. I think that it was because I lacked a mom and I just wanted a family. So I think that, and I noticed a lot of people who've been through things that I had been through, like similar, it's the same thing. I know so many teen parents that have the same, you know, backstory as me. And I feel like there's a underlying connection of like, we need to like do right, you know, by like our child, like
Yes.
this feeling of like, we weren't given, you know, a good parent or whatever. So we need to do that by them. And
yes, I've heard this before. Yeah.
yeah. And I remember with my child's father, it was definitely crazy. I think that our relationship failed because of all the stuff that I had been going through. And he was going through things as well. And we were just super young and super emotional, you know? So, you know, you can't communicate when you're like 14 and 15. But I remember just like how that felt, you know, like with him leaving, he left, which I'm not resentful because he's around now. He left for a while, but it wasn't stereotypical like, oh, he left because I got pregnant. He was going through his own stuff, you know. My son, his sister had actually passed away prior, and my son was born on the same day that she had passed away. So for him, I feel like there was lots of emotions about that, you know, like this is the day that, you know, like he lost his sister and now he has a kid at like 15. So he's probably, you know, going through all this stuff. So, I mean, no, nothing bad by him, but I think that him leaving brought up feelings of like my mom leaving and like my dad, you know, and I remember just feeling this like sick gut feeling. And like just feeling like I was gonna vomit like all the time. And it wasn't because I was pregnant and the hormones. I remember just feeling this like just a sickness, you know, like in myself. And when I had my son, I started to heal and I've been healing. I've still had my hard times, you know, after having him, definitely. But the past couple years since graduating high school, since I've been able to just really grow in myself and see who I am as a person, I've been able to face like the stuff I've gone through and like be a better person. And that reflects on my parenting, obviously. Yeah.
It sounds like you're really working on yourself.
Yeah, it's been a process, but I'm getting there, which is really hopeful for me because I never thought where I'd be today. I never thought that would happen. I didn't think I'd make it past like 16.
Really? You thought that when you were young, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to die young because I'm living hard?
Yeah, I genuinely believe that I was just not going to graduate or do anything. I thought I just like, I didn't know if I'd die, but I remember I just felt like my life was going to stop. It was really crazy. I felt like that since I was little.
And then having your son clicked in for you somehow that it was the time to get it together, time to heal.
Yeah.
Time to educate yourself.
I think it's because I never cared about myself because no one else had really cared about me. So I think that reflected onto how I viewed myself and my own self-image. And when I had someone else in the picture, I was like, well, great, you know, like someone does care and like I have to care. And I realized like this isn't like about me anymore, you know, like it'll never be about me. And it's crazy because a lot of people my age, they'd say like you're losing your youth, you know, or like just such shallow stuff, right? Like don't have a kid, whatever. And I'm like, for me, it's like funny because I'm like, I didn't even care about like myself, you know what I mean? Like everyone's like, oh, you got to live it up. I'm like, I didn't even care about that, you know? Like I was trying to make it day by day. Like I didn't even, and honestly, like, I think the worst parts of my life were definitely before I had my son. It was, you know, and a lot of people like, I don't know, like go through such shallow things. And I've been through so much. And I remember like now currently like hearing just like how society is, I get so angry. I have like this like burning fire in me that's like, that wants to help people, you know, and like let people know who haven't really been through stuff, it's like, I'm not trying to compare to you, but you need to like be conscious of like the things you say, you know, and how you treat people, because there's people out there who've been through a lot, you know? And I definitely feel myself. I think I'm an activist for those people. I'm not ashamed to say what I've done or been through. I'm pretty open about that. So I think that I was given that from God since I was born. I think everything that I went through was supposed to happen, genuinely. And it took a while for me to say that. So I've definitely come a long way.
And you're in school now and you have like 3 jobs and and you're raising a kid. So tell me what's going on in your life right now.
So funny, because when most people hear like 3 jobs, they assume it's like, you know, not so good ones. I actually do have the coolest job. I work at Doing Good Works and Fostering Media Connections, which are both nonprofit. Well, one's a nonprofit. Fostering Media Connections uses journalism to help foster youth. And Doing Good Works, we use like promotional merchandise to help foster youth, but I do the journalism side of it. So I do like impact stories and just kind of talk to people, like what we're doing today. And I also just got another job with my coworker's friend. He hooked me up with her. She's super cool. And she does like health and wellness, like fitness studios and stuff. So I'm kind of just interning there to see like what she's all about. So I have really cool jobs. I love all of them.
You do. You have like, you're doing really, really good, cool stuff.
Yeah, I definitely love it. And in college, I'm getting 3 associates. I'm planning on transferring. So I'm getting one in psych, communications, political science, and then a liberal arts degree. I don't even know. It just kind of happened. So technically 4, but I'm planning on transferring next year. I'm in like honor societies. I was on the speech and debate team. So I was pretty active on campus. And I remember I never thought I'd be that person. Like, you know, like I thought I was like the cool kid in high school and junior high, you know, like I was hanging out with the older people, like smoking weed, I don't know, doing drugs, whatever, like never involving myself, you know, not going to pep rallies, like ditching school, you know, like the whole thing. And now I'm like looking at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've come so far, you know, and I'm genuinely like happy. Like I used to make fun of these kids that like did this stuff. And like now I am that person, but I remember it was what I was always supposed to be doing. And when I was younger, I loved writing. I was always the writer. And now I'm being able to actually write things and like do it for work. So it's super cool.
It's so good to hear this because you do seem, you know, I've heard a lot of pain in your story, but I'm looking at you and hearing you, and I see incredible joy and accomplishment and pride in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. It took a lot. I just remember I kept pushing and I was like, I'm going to get this done, you know? And that's kind of how my personality trait, it's very stubborn. I'm the person that's like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, you know? Like I got pregnant. I was like, I'm going to have this kid and it's going to work out, period, you know? And then I was like, I'm going to finish high school on time, which I did, period, you know? Like I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do everything that I want to do, end of story. And I've just kind of kept that momentum, like with everything. And I noticed as I've been doing that, I've just been beating every odd that's been against me without even realizing it. Like I view it as normal now, you know, like sometimes I'll sit back and I remember I had another podcast that I had done previously a few months ago.
You are amazing. I just gotta say you're amazing. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Continue.
I remember I did a podcast a few months ago and my best friend, she was the one, her family has been there for me more than anyone. Since I was pregnant, they were the ones who helped me with everything. So she's like my sister. I've known her since I was like 5. So I remember I was talking to her and she knows everything, you know, like she's been through it with me. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say on this podcast because I've never been through anything. And she like looked at me and she was like, dude, and she just like, her face was just like, you're kidding, right? And I remember like, I've always wanted to speak about it, but I've never known the right things to say, you know? I've always wanted to share my story and I have so much more to say. Like, I just have tons of stories, you know, that could do a lot of good for some people. I feel like I've been through a little bit of like everything, you know, like a little, like if you grab every single spice and like put it into a big pot, like I haven't had all of the sugar or all of the cinnamon or whatever. I've had like a little sprinkle of everything. So I have some pretty good life advice. And I remember just thinking like, I don't want to say the wrong things to these people, you know, like this is my one chance. Like, I don't want to screw it up. And she just looked at me and she's like, you're ridiculous. Because like I had said that about myself. And it's crazy because that's how far I've come in such a short amount of time and being so young. Like I'm at that point already where I'm like, you know, like I'm kind of healed. Like I'm not completely healed, but I'm like almost there, you know? And I think it's because I had drawn out the process of all the bad stuff for so long that, you know, when like they say you're dating someone and you kind of get over it during the relationship. So when you break up, it's just done. That's kind of how my healing process has been, because I've been kind of healing a little bit along the way. So now that I'm actually ready to accept everything and to reflect on it, I've been able to heal a lot faster.
And you feel a certain amount of peace with that too.
I do. It's definitely hard, but I feel like myself again, which is something I didn't even know who I was when I was little, but I still had some reflections of who I was. And I feel like I didn't even know who that was, like as I was growing up. Just
right. So actually you feel like you are yourself now. You didn't have a chance to be yourself when you were little or when you were an adolescent, but you can be yourself now.
Pretty much, yeah. It's definitely has some roads, you know, but I feel like I'm able to actually think about like for once in my life, it's quiet and I can actually think about like, what do I enjoy doing? You know, like I know who I am. Now I'm like, what do I want to do with that? So now I'm kind of at that point in my process where I know like what I'm about and like what I should be doing, but I'm like, how do I make that happen? Where do I want to see myself in the next 5 years? And I remember like, I was like, ooh, I feel so mature. Like I never thought that'd happen.
And what's your relationship now with the man in your life?
We have a really good relationship. I think it's the first normal one I've ever had. It has brought me a lot of peace, and he has been there. It's crazy because he hasn't seen how I used to be, you know? So he has this image of like someone, like he always jokes and he'll be like, I just can't see you like that, you know, like not in a bad way, but in like, I just can't imagine it, you know? And it's the first relationship where my past baggage hasn't really affected it. Like there's still some things like normal things that, you know, people get upset about, whatever, but it's healthier, you know, like it's healthy. And it's crazy because when I first started dating him, I remember like midway, I was like, oh, I'm so bored, you know? And my friend was like, that's because this is a normal relationship, you know, like you're not getting cheated on or yelling or fight, you know what I mean?
Oh, so you had to, right. So you've had to learn how to like be loving and normal.
Pretty much. I had to learn how normal people have relationships. And I thought that was like boring. And I was like, that's so unhealthy. And now I'm like, oh my God, like whenever, you know, old people try to talk to me like that were in my life, I'm like, stay away, you know, like no hate to you, but like, I am just not about that anymore. And it took me a while, and I still have my own insecurities, obviously, just because of everything. And it is hard sometimes. His parents are really sweet. They're both really great, but they don't know a lot of stuff I've been through, you know? So sometimes they'll say certain things, because I did have a kid really young. They're really supportive, actually, believe it or not. But, you know, like sometimes they'll just say things that they, you know, think are funny, or like, you know what I mean? Or they'll just be like, you guys haven't really been through anything. And I get pissed, and I'm like, that's not the case. So there's stuff like that, but I feel like
right, but they don't know what you've been through,
exactly.
right?
So for me, that's why I feel like it's so important that I share to the world and to people, you know, so that they know that sometimes you might not know. So it's really important to be careful about how you talk to people, you know, because you don't even know what they've been through. So that's kind of where I've found myself. Because of them, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many other people like that, you know, like by looking at me, you wouldn't exactly expect all of it, especially how I usually like present myself. I present myself as, you know, like pretty professional on most days. So I feel like, you know, like people don't know. And it's important to know that, because you don't want to judge people for things like that, because people are going through their own stuff, you know, like people are just trying to go day by day. And imagine like what you said, like, you know, can really break them. So I feel like it's important that people know that.
And I think actually people hearing your story, it allows for the possibility of change, of true change that you have executed, because it doesn't sound like you got a whole lot of help from anybody.
Yeah, I didn't get really any help except for my best friend. Her family helped a lot. And, my dad does what he can, but my dad was more financially supportive and just emotionally shut off. And then I got all my emotional help from, my best friend and her family. I remember thinking, like, because people would always say, like, they assume, like, oh, your dad takes care of you, like, he's a good dad. And it would piss me off because I'm like, no, like, you don't know. You know what I mean? And he is an alcoholic. He's been struggling with that, forever. And he's not like abusive or anything, but he just says stupid stuff, because he gets drunk and then doesn't know what he says. And I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, I tell him that to his face, and people are like, that's so disrespectful. I'm like, but you don't understand, And I was told, like, oh, he must be a good dad because he, like, paid for me, And I'm like, I feel like that, like, and now that I'm a parent, I think that's BS, because I'm like, there's more to, like, being a parent than just, giving them $20 and, like, making sure they have a roof over their head. And I remember, like, I didn't really have a lot of help. And then the minute I was an adult, he, like, cut me off, which is fine, whatever. But I remember, like, it was just, he got cold towards me, like, he got like cold-hearted. And I don't understand why. He's been like that since I became an adult. And I don't understand why he's like that, but he is. So, I had to become independent since I was super young, doing things for myself. And then financially, it just happened super fast. It was like a big impact, like, I had never been taught finances, especially going through what I'd gone through. That was not something that my family taught me at all. I didn't have a bank account. I had no money. So I was, like, forced and slammed trying to figure it out, So it was pretty hard having to, like, go through all that.
But you really are figuring it out. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's like it's just really great to hear. I had no idea about any of this. I mean, just in our brief conversation beforehand, now I'm inspired. I'm like, I got to get to work and do the shit that she's doing. Okay, so tell me, what is the one thing that nobody would know about you unless you told them? And think deeply for a second.
This is hard. I feel like, I think it would be actually how I parent. I feel like because I look like I have it all together, people assume, especially nowadays, like, like the people that have me on social media and all that there's nothing, like, I don't have any problems, like, people are just constantly saying how, like, I'm a success story, and how I'm so inspirational, which is good. I'm not saying that's bad, but I hear it so much now. I feel like I have to, like, present myself a certain way, and I'm not allowed to be upset, like, I feel like I'm a different person at home, and I feel like two people know me, like, I feel like my friends don't even understand me completely anymore. I feel just like a whole different person at home. And I feel like that reflects on my parenting, because it is still hard, like, people always say, oh, you make it look easy. You make me want to have kids. And I'm like, it's not easy, like, yeah, like, I'm doing good. And, like, that's great for me, but it's still hard. And I feel like there are still hard parts in my life. And I feel like people wouldn't know that, just because they're like, oh, she's all better now. Like, oh, the girl who had a bad childhood, like, all the people who know me from when I was a kid, like, they look and they're like, oh, that's cool, she's better, like, pat on the back, like, move on. You know what I mean?
Right. So you mean people have no idea how hard it is for you actually all the time?
Pretty much.
Even because it looks so easy.
Yeah. Like, I have this sense of peace, like I mentioned, like, I am joyful, but I still get tense. I still feel like I can't connect with people, I feel like disconnected from myself a lot of the time. And it's like, I'm happy, so I'm not upset and I'm not angry. It's like a disconnect, like a lack of emotions, because I think I felt so many, like, my whole life. So now, and it kind of reflects on my parenting, like, I'm not always super happy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to always run around and be like this, joyful person. Like, sometimes I do get, like, sad, you know what I mean? And I feel like women don't talk about that enough, because society puts so much pressure on us, to be perfect, especially as parents and moms. Like, we have to, like, run the house and, like, all this stuff, whatever. And I'm like, for one, like, that's baloney. Like, you're allowed to feel, like, you're your own individual person. And aside from that, like moms who have gone through trauma and have depression and just go through, mental illness from their trauma. I feel like it's not talked about. And, I feel it, and I'm sure tons of other people feel it, whether they admit it or not. And I think that that's definitely something people wouldn't expect.
I think it's really important for people to hear this, especially from you, Tamar. The people who know you and also the people who don't know you, when they hear this frank truth, I think it's really important. Life is not easy, even if it looks like someone's life is easy. It really almost never is.
Yeah. I remember a lot of times throughout when I was younger, my childhood and adolescence, people would always say stuff like that, they'd be like people would actually tell me I had it easy, like new friends, you know what I mean? Because I didn't talk about anything. Like I literally, I could know someone for years and not once will they know anything personal about me, right? And people would be like, you have it easy, or like, you haven't gone through anything. And I'm like, I remember thinking like, okay, like this is insane. And
like, you don't know.
And literally, I'm like, there's a little, I'm like, you were messing with the wrong person right now. But I remember how I went to this class. It was I don't even know what it was. I think it was a sex trauma class, a Bible study, but it was focused in on fixing your trauma, right? With sexual behaviors, whatever. My best friend's family, they were like, oh, you should go, whatever. And they didn't tell me really what it was. And they brought my best friend with me because, emotional support, whatever. So I remember I went in there and we were the only young people, right? It's all these 40-year-old women. And then there's me and my best friend at 17. And I remember someone in there had shared something that was really terrible, right? And how me and her, we deal with our trauma by laughing, you know what I mean? And we, I swear to you, it was uncontrollable. And we were 17, and that's just we would make jokes about terrible things, really dark humor, right? Me and my best friend. And then we'd laugh it off. And that's how I dealt with my trauma, my whole life. I didn't want to actually feel anything about it. So that's how I express myself. And now I don't do that because I'm an adult, but I did that when I was younger. And I remember they got all mad, whatever. And I apologized. I was like, oh my God. I told them, I was like, that's how I deal with stuff, And I remember they assumed that we hadn't gone through anything. We're these two little girls, right? And little did they know, throughout that Bible study, we had to go through and list all the people that we had slept with. And over half of them, I had realized after coming out of that I was raped. And I remember thinking after they didn't know that, you know what I mean? And they just looked at me and said, oh, she looks, she's pretty, she's young, her and her best friend are here. They're probably just here because their parents want them, to be here. Little did they know that that's what I had written down. And I remember thinking back, I remember just thinking when people try to put you down and say that you haven't been through anything, they don't know that, and mental health is so important. And that really affected mine, that really, really affected mine, hearing these adults who are supposed to be protecting you and people who are also supposed to be the ones helping you. That was the point of the class. You know what I mean? I just felt so rejected. I never went back. I was that, no. And then I remember thinking things need to really change around just in general, and that's how I felt when I was younger, people just constantly saying I haven't been through anything, or a lot of my friends would say that because I just didn't tell them, I was just quiet about it. I would tell them stuff, but in a very how we're talking, a story way. I was telling them a story. It couldn't possibly be me, right? So I never emotionally expressed it. I never took it to that level. It was always very surface level conversation. They had an idea of stuff, but nothing too crazy. And I think it was like that because every single person that I had told stuff that really bothered me, they always left. Every time I opened up to someone a little too much, they'd leave. And I always viewed it as it was because I told them, and usually it wasn't. It was because of something else. But, I was young and that's how I viewed it. So I associated you don't tell people things because then this is going to happen. X equals Z, whatever. So yeah, I'm just sick. Honestly, as an adult, I'm sick and tired of people trying to say that I haven't been through anything, or just shutting me down, and assuming. And it's definitely hard to because I wasn't in a bunch of group homes and I didn't move around a lot, but I was still affected, by it. And the government basically says, oh, like if you're not 13, like you haven't been through anything. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how they view it. Like they don't help as much if you're like under 13, they're kind of just like, oh, cast you to the wolves, whatever. And then when you age out, like so many people who age out as an adult, like they're just screwed, And I'm sick and tired of like that happening to people, because it's basically like putting labels on people and saying like, your story matters, but you have to meet like ABC, like literally like that's how it is nowadays, like you can only be important if you meet this criteria. Like that's quite literally like how it feels. And I'm just so sick of that. Like, I'm pissed.
Right. So that's prompted you to become a foster youth advocate, right?
Yeah. My goal, I really want to help teen parents, specifically teen parents who are in foster youth, foster care. But I don't know how that's going to look like. But I think that my voice can really help a lot of people. So I've been trying to figure out like how I can do that because it's so screwed up, like the real side of things is it's like no one's allowed to like think for themselves anymore, especially with social media. It's as if you are this type of person or you're this type of person. Like everyone's just like little clones. You know what I mean? Like people aren't just like living and like doing things because they want to. You know what I mean? And I feel like I've met so many women who didn't keep their kids because they solely were told, like someone had told them, you just can't do it. And they had been like, it's not like they didn't want it. They were like, I really wanted to, but everyone just put me down. So they weren't, I guess, as strong-willed as me, so they weren't just like, F you, I'm going to do it anyways. Like they were, affected by like society saying they couldn't do it. And I'm like, that's baloney because I did it, and I went through a ton of hell. And like, my life is good now, like as surface level, like everyone's happy, taken care for, I can afford things, like I have a good house to live in, I'm not homeless or anything like that. So it's like, people can have the same life, you know what I mean? And like, I know that my life can get better too. Like my life still has a ton of problems, but it's only getting better, And I feel like I can let people know, like, be like, hey, yeah, it's going to be hard, but if this is the path you want to go down, like I want to support you through it and let you know that you're not alone, and that you can do it and that your quality of life is going to be just as good as everyone else's, like people just associate like being a parent and then your quality of life is gone. That's like the biggest lie that anyone has ever said. And they say that about just in general, you know what I mean? Like they say like people who choose not to go to college, like you're going to be poor and destitute forever, or people who have mental health issues, they're gonna be like, oh, you're always going to be crazy. You know what I mean? Or like people just are put all these labels. And I feel like for me at least, the more that people tell you that's your label, the more you start to believe it. And that does become you, And I feel like that I just want to do something about it. I'm sick and tired of people not taking their life into their own control.
I think it sounds like you're going to do a lot of things, a lot of really, really good things. I thank you for talking to me today and for being so honest and yourself.
Yeah, of course. It's the first time I've actually talked about it for a while. So I think in a long, long, long time. So this was definitely nice to reflect.
Thank you, Tamar. What a lovely young woman. She's just doing it for herself. She's making her own better life herself. The more of these young kids that I record, I'm just increasingly astounded by how repeatedly they've been failed, if not compromised, by all the adults in their lives. And yet many of them figure out a way to make a better life for themselves, like Tamar. So good on you, girl. And if there's any kids in trouble out there listening right now, remember what she said. You're not alone. You are not alone. If you see something, say something. If you suspect that a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. I want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful music, Eferisto. To hear more from music, go to Spotify and Instagram at Christina Aposto. That's ChristianaAposto. I know you want to. Her stuff is really great. And thanks to my audio producer extraordinaire, Marcos Campito. I'm glad I found you. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear, please rate us and hit subscribe.